Hello everybody. Welcome back for another video. Hope you're all doing well and that you're all having a fantastic day. And without any further ado, let's jump right into it. A bit of a weird news day. I'm not sure exactly why. I have my guesses as to why. But for some reason, the discussion has very rapidly, in the last couple of days, turned back to the idea of US dollar debt, inflation, how high things are going, what's happening with this cycle, and things of that sort. One of the earlier ideas for Bitcoin was that it would become more attractive to people who were trying to escape any kind of inflation that they were going through within their country. In a very, I guess, symbolic move, no one seems to care that inflation is really, really bad in other countries. And that we've had news for nearly almost, if not a decade, if not more, of people actually choosing to use and buy Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation in many different countries. But when it comes to the United States, it seems to be the only thing that people actually care about. So regardless of the fact that we might hear and have heard about that there are other countries and other citizens in other places who have been buying up Bitcoin because they are under, 100, 200, 300% inflation on a yearly basis or what have you. No one blinks an eye. It's the same exact thing with the other countries getting ETFs before and no one paying attention until BlackRock enters, not realizing that a lot of other people, millions of people around the world, if not tens of millions, who are affected by terrible inflation are buying up crypto. The idea has once again turned back into this, and I don't know if it's fear-mongering. I'm not sure exactly what it is. Last year, and I definitely remember the year before, I'm making videos on both channels where I was discussing the idea of people coming forward to talk about debt levels and to talk about money printing and to kind of scare people in a way. The idea basically being, if you don't do something right now because the US dollar is going to do this and debt's going to spiral out of control. It's kind of like every single year where we hear that the debt ceiling has to be raised, and a week before the debt ceiling is raised, all the news is talking about a US government shutdown, US this is going to happen, and it keeps going. And I remember ever since I was a little kid, there hasn't been a government shutdown because of debt, and the US dollar hasn't spiraled so much out of control that you weren't able to go buy baby formula or whatever people are buying in the supermarket these days. So for some reason, a large portion of the cryptocurrency news was not revolved around, it's been months now, has not revolved around Bitcoin's price, the halving, the ETFs or anything like that. The news today was just about how scary US debt is. And like I said, I haven't figured out exactly why this is the main discussion that everyone's having, but alas, here we are. This week, his name is Michael Novogratz, the chief executive of the company known as Galaxy Digital, predicted the Bitcoin price and wider crypto market would be benefiting from spiraling US debt. He said, and I quote, "There's one number I think you should keep on your refrigerators." Why would you do that? $34 trillion of debt, and in 100 days, it'll be 35 trillion, and in 200 days, it'll be 36 trillion, and until the United States and other countries get their finances in order, the story for Bitcoin and other digital assets is going to continue to grow, end quote. Novogratz said during the company's earnings call this week, the Bitcoin story is powerful right now. End quote again. This is something that a lot of you probably haven't had any relative exposure to. What he's alluding to is the original idea of Bitcoin. And when I say a lot of you haven't probably been exposed to it, it's simply because no one talks about this anymore. One of the main ideas as to why Bitcoin goes up is because other assets go up. Other assets go up because of inflation. The more that you print, the people who hold the assets gain the most benefit from the rise in inflation. That is literally like how the actual system works. So you will see that asset values tend to skyrocket as we actually have more inflation within the system. This is why you see asset prices go up. It's also because they become more valuable, but it's also because they keep up with the literal level of inflation. And this is why the people who have the assets have the power, have the money. The same exact thing holds true for Bitcoin, but in Bitcoin's case, it's quite different. So while with many other assets or many other things, when it comes to shoes or diamonds or gold or whatever else people are buying, watches as a form of an asset class, there is no limit to how many of those can be made. With Bitcoin, mathematically, as inflation continues to go up on fiat currencies, which is a byproduct of the idea of capitalism, you need to continuously create more as the population increases, which then pushes money further into the market so that these people have enough money, I mean, air quotes, to be able to get money from their job, to be able to push back into the market. Bitcoin would logically also benefit from that as well if Bitcoin's 21 million were actually infinite. If you could continuously make more Bitcoin above the 21 million, Bitcoin's price would still continue to rise. But what we're witnessing is that Bitcoin does extremely well because there's not a lot of Bitcoin to go around. Remember that part that I've been saying over the course of the last couple of years. For some reason, I'm not sure exactly how the US debt has re-entered the equation. This was also recently, in the news as well from Larry Fink. It says, for those of you not looking at the screen, Larry Fink joins Jamie Dimon and Jerome Powell in sounding the alarm on snowballing national debt. The situation is more urgent than I can remember, and let us not live under this disillusioned illusion that these people also aren't responsible for the way that the world actually is right now. I'm seeing a fluff piece articles about Jamie Dimon, about Larry Fink, and a bunch of other people who literally were the reason why we had the 2007, 2008, 2009 financial crash. Like, they're part of that system as well. Don't ever forget that. This is what they want you obviously to forget. There's a lot. They're literally the reason for the system that we have right now continuing, even as we have the opportunity to and could move further into exclusively a Bitcoin type of system where debt doesn't necessarily exist and the cost of consumer goods goes down relative to Bitcoin's actual deflation. But that's an entirely different discussion. For some reason, everyone has begun to refocus on the idea of national debt, in some way thinking or insinuating that governments don't know that they're in debt. You understand? So they'll make a lot of articles and they'll talk about how bad the debt levels are, but this is by design. The system is made to actually be this way. If you ever get a chance to watch a documentary, and this is very tricky because any documentary you find on debt will be similar to these articles that are kind of popping up. It's very difficult to find one that actually discusses the actual levels of debt and how they're handled. These countries know that they're in debt, and they know that they're in debt to other countries. The other countries know that they're also in debt to the United States. It's kind of, I forgot the exact term for it, but it's if I don't do it, you don't do it kind of thing, and then we're all okay. If any country ever asks for the money from their debt back, other countries basically then get in line and begin to ask for theirs as well. But the problem is that all economies would collapse. And if all economies collapse and all governments collapse, and it's something that they can't ever basically allow. So they've prepared for this and have known for this for a very long time. They knew the actual consequences of getting off the dollar standard since the 80s and the 90s. The people can predict these crazy wild numbers in the trillions, and it sounds weird, but they knew that it's going to happen, and the idea is that it's at some point going to hit 100 trillion. There's never going to be a situation where they ask for any of the money back because they know that no other countries are going to do the exact same thing. There have been countries before in the past, if you actually get it, I mean, I don't know how you would find this, who have actually tried to ask for their money back. And the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank have like hounded them because it's something that's spoken but unspoken. You don't ask for any of the money back from the debt. The weird part is that this will continue to actually affect everyone, billions of people around the world. And it's just a continued and a literal symptom of 2020 and 2021, because we would have eventually seen these debt levels in maybe 2041 and other things like that. But of course, a lot of printing took place before, and that's basically just to keep the entire system afloat. And I know that the world is not ready for a full Bitcoin system because we've seen exactly how the Lightning Network and other things like that are structured and how they're working, but not really working in the actual way. So I'll put it to you this way so we can actually move on. In order for the world to financially get better, we have to leave the old system behind. And I heard someone shake their head up and down and they go, yep. The problem is that you don't understand what it means to leave the old system behind. The life that you have would no longer be. The luxuries that you currently live with or buy would not be there for you unless you were actually holding Bitcoin. This is a huge reason for the gigantic question mark in the sky and why I've consistently said I would love if we didn't hear every single day that BlackRock was holding 200 million bajillion Bitcoin and that other people around the world were buying. Because the way that the old system would collapse or collapses is basically anyone who makes money from that system through their job, through renting out apartments, through dividends from stocks, would all disappear. And the only thing that you would basically have or need in this scenario, if you listen to Bitcoin maximalists, would be Bitcoin. And this would benefit you in a number of ways. It would get rid of the old debt system. And I mean in all aspects. It would be very difficult to claim that you have more Bitcoin than you actually did because we could verify quite easily what's on the screen. The other thing that would benefit you very well is that you'd be able to save a lot more. You'd be able to have a lot more that you could pass on to other generations, which is very difficult to do right now under the current system, which also penalizes you if you save. And penalizes you if you have too much money. You have to do something with the money to be able to make more money. And it's this constant loop that you live under. With Bitcoin, the idea is that as Bitcoin continues to gain in value as the old system collapses, the value of other assets would also decrease as well. So you would not be in a bind to have to buy a house, what have you, because the value of it would actually decrease comparative to the amount of Bitcoin that you have the next year and continuing the next year and the next year. So you would have more money simply by saving as opposed to having to be incentivized to buy a new home. Do you understand? The entire system changes dramatically. It wouldn't be overnight. This is what we're slowly seeing. This is why you hear, or when you are hearing, the significance of Bitcoin taking over gold. It's because that's the flip of the system. But the people who are screaming the loudest for this are the people who have the 200, 300, 400,000 Bitcoin. Is because the system then changes. It becomes, if you hold Bitcoin, you hold the money, you hold the power. The governments don't control the money or the power anymore because they're no longer printing the money, or rather you have moved to a new system that they don't control, Bitcoin. You see the valuations of everything else dropping quite dramatically comparative to the amount of Bitcoin that you have, and the value of your Bitcoin goes up US dollar wise and or just value wise in general comparative to other assets year on year. The world is not ready. And many people out there right now who are even holding Bitcoin are not ready for that kind of system that kind of benefits everyone. And I mean everyone in the sense of everyone who's holding Bitcoin. So if you ever, there's a chart as well. I haven't seen this in years. It has like, I think it's called like the stages of adoption or something like that. And it shows the levels of current Bitcoin adoption. This is why you might remember many years ago, many years ago, where we constantly heard Bitcoins in 1995 right now, Bitcoins in 1997. It was based off of the levels of adoption of the internet comparative to Bitcoin. And they showed the levels of adoption for the internet through the stages. And it took a while. you probably lived in a world where you were using, a smartphone or some other smart device, or using the internet every single day since the mid 90s. But a lot of other places, it took them quite a long amount of time. There were a lot of other countries who were even considering not adopting the internet because they thought that it wouldn't be something that their country needed. So this is why we didn't see mass adoption of the internet to around 2004, 2005 until 2009. That's when it really surged with the advent of the iPhone and other companies who were mimicking them, basically making other smartphones that were less expensive for $200, $300, $400. And this led us to the world that we have right now. It took us a while to get here. So it'll still take us another 20 to 30 years until we see actual mass Bitcoin adoption. This is what it means that you are an early adopter. We have not gotten to 6 figures. We have not gotten to 7 figures. And we have not gotten to a 9-figure Bitcoin yet. If you're holding on to your Bitcoin and you have your Bitcoin, and this is the maximalist talking, and we reach a 9-figure Bitcoin and other asset classes have collapsed, you would, of course, benefit the most by holding on to your Bitcoin. But then the system also changes where basically you don't have to have other assets. Of course, you can buy things that make you happy, but you're no longer incentivized to get dividends. You're no longer incentivized to do these other things because you know that next year, comparative to the US dollars and the euro and the yen that are still being printed, your Bitcoin is going to be worth more. You will see other asset classes fall down as Bitcoin continues to become deflationary. I just saw an article, or maybe it was a video on YouTube. It was talking about, it said why China's deflation is more serious than you know. And it's because, for those of you who are unaware, deflation doesn't hurt the citizen. Deflation hurts the government. It hurts their GDP, and it shows that the government is not making as much money as they're supposed to make year on year, because governments are supposed to tax you. They're supposed to print money, and they're supposed to show on their books that they have made more money. They've printed more money. They've created more money. It shows that essentially they're in more debt and have gotten stronger. A little bit too much to actually explain there, but it's great for you. It's not great for them, and it's also not great if the government doesn't control the creation of Bitcoin. This is why you've seen in a number of other countries, they're really adamantly, a lot of other places have banned Bitcoin. It's because that government knows we didn't create it. We don't control it. At some point when Bitcoin's value, it just passed by the valuation of silver. When Bitcoin's valuation passes the valuation of gold, Bitcoin is it. He who controls Bitcoin, he who owns Bitcoin has the actual power. It's the people who are minting it, the people validating transactions. They're the winners. It's the same thing like I told you with the Veblen effect that we've been talking about before as well. The entire idea is that once Bitcoin is worth more than property, people are going to start buying and hoarding more Bitcoin because they know that in valuation, it'll go up more than them actually being able to buy property. Think about that. If you have an entire Bitcoin and Bitcoin's valuation goes up to $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 this year or next year, you know that it is going to far outpace any type of real estate that you could have or would have purchased. Where's the price in 10 to 15 years? Far higher than any real estate that you could have ever purchased. Other people will begin to take note, start buying fragments of Bitcoin. Bitcoin goes to $10 million, and these people have $750,000 in fragments of Bitcoin, and they go, this is a better investment than I could have made in anything else. You understand? This is it takes a gigantic mass mental shift for everyone to really get on board with it. And this is why we've seen before so much kind of pushback against it. This is why you've seen before the hyper millionaires and the billionaires years ago talking so negatively about it. I mean, it's the word's not double-edged. It's double thought. They realize where this was going to go. So in essence, a lot of them needed to make sure that you thought that something terrible was happening with Bitcoin. Why do you think they talk so highly and praise it now? Is because they own a large portion of it. They know that, and I say if, not when, if the world changes to a Bitcoin standard, that they'll be okay. It's always, of course, just about money. But we see that the system is actually changing. The way that things currently are, if we didn't have Bitcoin, if we didn't have cryptocurrencies, we'd still live in this world where Like the debt is always going to accrue. It's simply a thing. There's probably never going to be a time in world history where we hear these countries literally come together, sing kumbaya, hold hands, and say like, all debt is forgiven, because then the countries collapse because they're run on debt. If all debt was forgiven, the current system that you live under, that you benefit from, would cease to exist. The reason why you might be seeing a lot of things on PayPal where they have like payment plans, and I can't name all the other companies. There are so many of them. Every single place wants you to buy something. When I was younger, we used to call this layaway. Basically, like, putting small bits of money away all the time to be able to actually acquire something. The reason why they're doing this is because you're meant to be a customer for life. You are meant to be in debt the same exact way that the system is in debt. You are constantly told, if you want to be happy, you have to have a partner, you have to have kids, and you have to have a house. How do you get that house? How do you get those cars? You have to be in debt. Why do they want you in debt? Because you pay back that debt for the rest of your life. Why are they telling you to lease a car every single year? Because it's a slight form of debt that you are paying back to a company over and over and over, and then you get used to it because you always have a brand new pretty car. Why are they not telling you to buy a 2002 car that works perfectly fine? Because it doesn't get the bank money. It doesn't continuously feed into the system. It's always just about keeping control in some sort of way. But if Bitcoin takes over, like you almost can't imagine a world without debt. Think about it. Imagine a world where you aren't even incentivized to work as much. You know that you could have a part-time job because the Bitcoin that you're holding is going to be worth more the next year. Very, very weird thoughts, right? For whatever reason, a major portion of the news today was about U.S. debt and snowballing national debt. Do you know how debt is created by a bank? Let's say you walk into the bank and you go, hey, I would like a mortgage for $500,000 to buy a luxury mansion, whatever you're trying to buy. And literally, I mean, the way that it works is that someone can go to a computer. If you get the yay and someone says yes, they can type on the computer that they're giving you like debt in the form of $500,000, and that information gets passed on to the Federal Reserve, who then prints money according to the amount of debt that they actually created. So it's literally these people who are sounding the alarm, like it's because of them. They know how the system works. You don't become a multi-trillion-dollar entity and don't understand that you're the problem. But it's a lot easier if you front run it and run in front of everyone and say, oh no, there is a problem. What are we going to do? So when everything collapses, you can go, see, we told you it was going to happen. Then everyone doesn't point at you and says, no, you're the reason why it happened. Yeah, very, very odd. A lot of almost said companies. A lot of countries right now are announcing that they're going to have to start lowering interest rates. A lot of people are very anxious about when the U.S. is going to do it. Larry Fink, I think, in this announcement as well, announced that he thinks that the U.S. isn't going to have 4 interest rate cuts this year. He said not even 3. A lot of people are simply predicting 1 interest rate cut this year. Because an interest rate cut kind of signifies that the economy is doing well enough that you can kind of ease and print more money. But the problem is that the economy has never been doing well. And it sounds kind of crazy. And it's mainly because of social media and the internet that we know that it's not doing well. And I know that sounds weird. It's kind of like, I know I'm not the only one. I mentioned before that I don't watch news as much anymore. I like to be well informed. The problem is that it's like a constant avalanche. If I'm on Instagram, if I'm talking to family, if I'm on YouTube, if I'm walking down the street, someone will send me a photo, a video, a screenshot. It's always something. It's constant. And this is how we know and understand like the current way that the world is. But for those of you who didn't know, the world's always been this way. It's literally always been this way. But when we were younger, I remember I would hear about this like briefly on the news, and then it would kind of go to another topic. Or in the morning, I would maybe pick up a newspaper, I would read something, and that was all the access that you had to it. But with the internet, we know constantly. We see all the numbers. We understand as a people that the situation is bad. You understand? It's kind of this, like, it's because it's everywhere that we kind of see it everywhere. I know it sounds cryptic, but it's not at all. I promise. And yeah, there's no way to get around it. You can sound the alarm as much as you want, but these people aren't going to change. There's not a dimension where Larry Fink is going to throw his hands up and go, let's fix the world. It's just simply not a thing. It's because of the way that the system is actually created. Yeah. For whatever reason, that's the largest portion of the news today. A lot of ETF news still floating around about the inflows and stuff like that, the amount of money that BlackRock is receiving, and Fidelity. We had recently news about Grayscale talking about lowering their fee for their ETF, which is absolute nonsense because they should have or could have completely done that before. And the price predictions is still going strong. I'm not sure where everyone else is looking, but I'm seeing still very mixed numbers as to when the Bitcoin halving is going to be. I see some that say 12 days. I see some that say 16 days. I saw a couple that said 20 days. Middle of April is basically as far as we've kind of gotten mentally as to when this is going to happen. And then I assume there's going to be a major shift back in the news once again, talking about optimistic things. I'm very, very shocked. So much of the news today was just focused around this entire US debt thing. But I have a feeling there's like other motives for bringing up this topic right now at this very moment, as opposed to, you know, over the course of the last decade, because it's been a constant thing. Anyway, yeah. I hope that you've all enjoyed this, I guess, different video just talking about US debt and Bitcoin and how the system could change. We could all live in a very different world. Like a very, very different world where like no one was in debt and everyone just kind of lived fine and, dare I say, more equal. But there's a huge difference in owning 3 million Satoshis compared to 300,000 Bitcoin. But that's also another discussion for another time. Hope that you've all enjoyed. Hope you all are having a great day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, wherever you might be. I do hope it's absolutely fantastic. Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, and supporting. And I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See you.